Welcome to another episode of Inner Mastery, where you start to learn the secrets within you so life can build you up rather than break you down. And in this episode, we are diving into a book club edition. So we are reading A New Earth by Eckhart Tolle. We are on chapter 3. This episode is the first part of chapter 3. In my book, it goes up to page 72, where it says the ego is not personal. That's what we dive into. And I think the discussion today, I used politics as an example of what this means in the real world. I think sometimes spiritual teachings and understandings, they're like a bit esoteric. We don't really understand how to ground them and use them in our life, or like how is this actually showing up. So this is called the core of the ego. It's really talking about the unconsciousness that so many people are living within, believing that they are their thoughts, getting entrenched in their beliefs, thinking they're right, others are wrong. And I think this plays out so beautifully in politics. And at the time of this discussion, we're a couple of weeks away from the election here in the United States. And I talked about, how people are looking through certain lenses at their candidates, and the same interview, the same interaction, people can have opposite ends of the spectrum on, what they think about it. And then also interesting candidates like RFK Jr., who is not operating through ego and is operating from a higher level of conscious awareness. And it's really fascinating to watch how he's run his campaign and interactions, with the media and interviews with him. So hopefully this example that I sort of spin throughout the whole thing will help you kind of ground this into reality and help you, right? Because the whole idea is let's help you master your inner world. Let's figure out where your ego mind is taking over, with those thoughts that are not actually helpful. And if you haven't already, please make sure if you're listening on audio, you give this a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this with a friend. I think this is a fascinating conversation and an awareness that we all need to have. Hey there, Danielle Matthews here. I'm coming to you live from Florida, and today is Monday, so it is book club day, and we are in the midst of reading this book, Eckhart Tolle's A New Earth. And they're deep chapters. We are on chapter 3 right now, and it's called The Core of the Ego. So it's really fascinating. If you find yourself often sort of ruminating with thoughts like, well, things could have gone this way, it should have been like that, I don't understand, this isn't fair. Those are like the most typical traps of the ego. And this is how your ego mind keeps its identity, right? It's through these complaints. And so this chapter really sort of broke down these typical like grooves, these typical ways of being. Hey guys, let me know when you're here. If you're joining me for Book Club Live, let me know when you get here. If you're watching the recording, let me know that you're watching the replay. But it was really fascinating sort of breakdown of like, what is the core of the ego mind? And then once you can sort of identify it, then you're able to get yourself liberated from it and free yourself from it. So, by the way, if you're new to my content, I help guide people on a healing journey, physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And book club is part of that mental, emotional, and spiritual growth. And it's free. Book club is free to join and connect in. We go live every single Monday at noon Eastern time. So what I did, honestly, is I took notes out of the book because I don't know about you guys, but I just had so many thoughts flowing as I was going through this. So, last week, a lot of the discussion and probably what I thought was the most powerful statement that he made thus far in the book was that he was saying every situation in life is exactly what you need for your conscious awareness to grow. And I think that sort of begs the question, well, what is consciousness? Or what does it mean to live unconsciously? And so I'm curious for you guys that are here, what does it mean to be unconscious? When we think about that, I'll see if I can see. Nice, awesome, lots of you are here. For some reason, I've got everything in the way here, so I can't see comments. Okay, there we go. Now I can see everybody. So what does it mean to be unconscious? Like if you were to sort of just break it down and somebody says to you, I don't even understand consciousness. What do you mean by this? What does it mean to be unconscious? In the spiritual sense, this is what he gets into in the very first page of chapter 3, so page 59. He basically says, look, spiritually speaking, what it means to be unconscious is it means that you are identified with the thoughts in your mind. You believe that you are your thoughts, that talking, that incessant chatter, that chitter chatter, you believe that you are the thinker. That is to be unconscious. Consciousness is realizing, oh, I am the one that is aware of the thoughts. I am the thing that is here before the thought arrives, when the thought is here, and after the thought is gone. I am the one watching, right? I am the witness. And hey, Jane. Hey, Lou. Hey, Tina. Hey, everybody. Hey, Charlotte. Hey, Brad. All right. So that is what it means to be unconscious. And so basically, if we go to what the last chapter said, it said that every situation in life is presenting you with things, with the exact right dynamics, so that you can increase your conscious level of awareness, so that you can figure out, where am I just completely identified with my pre-programmed thoughts and reactions? Where am I being unconscious? That's really kind of the bottom line here. All right, but he dives into, in this chapter, like, okay, what is the ego doing that is tricking us so many times to just go be absorbed by it, and that we identify with it just like automatically and unconsciously? All right. And I don't know about you. As I started to sort of get into more of this, I guess, spiritual awareness, right? Of like, oh, I am more than my mind. So then what am I? Right. And that's, I think, where spirituality opens up. And I started to say, like, well, why in the heck do I even have an ego? Like, this seems like not fair. Like, why was I born with an ego mind if it's like such a crazy, like, masochistic thing that constantly is causing me stress? Like, why do I have it? Put a 1 in the chat. Has anyone else, like, also wondered that? I'm like, what's the point of this thing? It's driving me crazy. Do I need this? For me, that was a big question. And I think that for many other people, I have heard similar questions over the years as I have been working with many people in my own programs of like, yeah, why is this here? Yeah, other people's. One, forever. Yeah, okay. So here's the deal. Your ego mind, like, if you think about it this way, I think the yogis sort of explain this beautifully. They say, okay, it's as if everything is water. Like, everything is the ocean. Everything here that is here comes from this consciousness, from the ocean. So the ocean comes into form, right, as a wave. You are a wave. I am a wave, right? Tina is her own wave. I am my own wave, but we're both made from the ocean. Make sense? It's like if you were to like a potter, right? Everything is made from clay. They could make a mug, or they could make a bowl, or they could make whatever, but it's all made from the same stuff. So everything is made from this consciousness. And if you've ever read the book, The Science of Getting Rich, they call it the thinking stuff, right? Everybody talks about this. It's the same thing in all religions too. But anyway, so we're here, and now I'm a wave, and the wave now has access to the land of form, to the air, to everything here in the land of form that we're seeing. And so in order to navigate the land of form, you need to learn. You have to figure out, what are cultural norms, right? What's the language? How do you speak? How do you walk? How do you use this body? So the ego mind is basically like a computer, and it's the thing that remembers how to drive the car, so that every time you get in the car, you know how to drive, right? It's these things that, yeah, it's a bunch of contents in the container, but it's your life experience that's helping you to navigate this world. And so if we didn't have it, we'd be a hot mess. We need it. The thing is, sometimes the computer gets programmed poorly. All right? It's like there's a bug in the hardware. And so all of a sudden, the programming is bad. And so then we are interacting and reacting to life in a way that is in disservice to our bodies and to our state of stress and our state of happiness. So that's why we have it. Okay? We need it to operate. So, all right, so we need it. So it's not an enemy. It's just something we have to understand. And if you can understand how it operates and how it's working and what its programming is, you can start to not get duped by it, to not get taken over by it, to just go, oh, that's my program of da-da-da-da-da running. Let me stop the program. Let's reprogram this machine. Make sense? Like, if you can understand your inner machinery, you can master your inner world, right? That's why I call my program Inner Management Mastery, because if you can learn to master the inner world, you'll be free. And that's really mastering the ego. So we want to be able to remember these things. And I think that, he talks about, I think it was page 60, he says every ego, so all of us as waves, if you will, all of us have this ego, and it lives on identification and separation. So the ego has separated from the ocean. It only believes it exists in the world of form. So it can never get you back to experiencing the ocean. All right, it has separated. That's part of how it exists because it's meant for survival. It's the survival instinct in this world. So it has to be separate from to keep the form alive, to keep the wave alive. And it identifies with everything that you put in it. So the basis of your identity is a precarious thing because it's thoughts and emotions. And those very things, by their very nature, are ephemeral and fleeting. And so what does the ego do? Like it's the thoughts that come in, right? It's the emotions that come in, but those things come and go, as we know. And so what the ego needs to do is it needs to figure out a way to keep its identity, keep its existence. And so it tends to create a lot of thoughts. All right. And one of the biggest things it does is complains. So complaining and resentment, these are the things that it's doing to help keep its identity. All right. And how many, put a 1 in the chat if you identify with the fact that the mind sometimes sort of automatically just starts to go, well, that shouldn't be that way. It could have gone this way. That's not fair. I don't understand. It should have been this. It should have been that. They shouldn't have done that. This person knew better, right? That is the complaining we're talking about. And it is so unconscious and it is so automatic. I mean, it is like, as soon as you see it, you go, oh, why am I letting that thing rule me? Like, that's a crazy inner roommate, right? It's like lost its mind. It complains about everything. All right, you're with me. So there's levels of unconsciousness. All right. Just like there's levels of conscious awareness, as we start to use life to help us be more consciously aware, we're going to become more and more and more aware. And it's like the layers just keep going. Well, there's also layers of unconsciousness. And I thought this was really interesting. If you're complaining and you're calling someone a name, well, they're a jerk, right? That's one layer of unconsciousness. Like you're so identified with your own reactions that now you're hardening in on them and you're pointing externally and going, that person's a jerk. Then there's yelling, right? Now you could name call somebody in your own mind. The next layer of unconsciousness, right, is now shouting at somebody, yelling at somebody. And then another layer of unconsciousness is physical violence, actually getting into a physical fight with somebody. That's your ego that has now made you so convinced that you're so right and they're so wrong and it's a problem that you need to now go hit them. It's completely unconscious, or kill them, right? Look at the wars going on. Like it's complete ego. Fascinating. Yeah. So, all right. Think about that sort of bleeds into, he says, resentment. And so I'm just going to kind of read from page 62. He says, you resent other people's greed, their dishonesty, their lack of integrity, what they are doing, what they did in the past, what they said, what they failed to do, what they should or shouldn't have done. The ego loves it. Instead of overlooking unconsciousness in the other, you make it into their identity. And sometimes the fault that you perceive in another isn't even there. It is a total misinterpretation and a projection by your mind, a mind conditioned to see enemies to make itself right or superior. That is humbling. So what he's putting forth there, I think the key thing he says there is the mind tends to overlook the unconsciousness in others and make them into an enemy. So instead of realizing, well, I have this crazy unconscious mind that's name calling and doing a bunch of BS, everybody else is dealing with the same thing. And so we are dealing with other people that are also completely unconscious and unaware that they are running on a program that isn't serving them. And so what he's saying is, look, if you can just, first of all, disidentify yourself, you're going to start to have compassion for other people rather than this complete resentment. Right? But because so many people are unconscious, they have this resentment and then they're looking through this lens. Like, just look at politics. I mean, right now in the US, like it is fire right now because we're a couple weeks away from the election. So what's fascinating, like, well, you'll watch an interview. So there was an interview that a bunch of comedians did recently with Donald Trump. And I watched the interview, and then I watched the comedians like sort of chat about it after. And they said something that I thought was really interesting. And they said, it's crazy. The right, so Trump supporters, thought it was a fantastic interview. And then the left, Kamala supporters, also thought it was a fantastic interview. And they were like, how did we do that? Like, how did we please both sides with the same interview? It's because people were looking at it through a lens of a certain expectation and projection, right? So for the right, they were looking at it and they were going, oh, look, this is humanizing him. And people can really get a sense, like, this guy's got a great sense of humor. You know, the media up to this point has never shined light on the fact that, like, he's a good man with a good sense of humor. And then you have the left going, oh my gosh, look at this. He's such a clown. Like, these comedians are laughing in his face and he doesn't even understand that they're laughing at him. He's such an idiot. Like, it's fascinating. The same exact information viewed completely differently based on where the ego mind is having an expectation. And this is what I love. He says it's a total misinterpretation because it is a projection of a mind that is conditioned to see an enemy, is conditioned to see someone in a certain way, and so they bring that light into it. Isn't it fascinating? I think politics is probably one of the best ways to see the role of ego and how it manifests in, like, the populace and humans, and also to just check yourself and go, okay, what am I bringing to the table here that's causing me to see this in a way that I'm not actually seeing what's physically in front of me? Put a 2 in the chat if you understand what I'm saying. Does this make sense? I think this whole resentment thing, like, because it's like charged emotions, especially in this election. There's a lot of charged emotions on either side, and it's so fascinating to go, hey, everyone's just viewing it through this lens. And it's a beautiful way to see it. So what he also said that I thought was amazing is that he said, what you react to in another, you're strengthening in yourself. Whoa. So if you are judging others, you are strengthening judgment within yourself. Powerful. Like the feedback loop, karma, very fast, right? Karma has a lot to, people don't talk about internal karma. Internal karma is completely like, well, how you are is exactly what's going to come back. It's amazing. I thought that was fascinating that he pointed that out. And he also said, when you realize it's not personal, there is no longer a compulsion to react as if it were. And I'm just going to continue the sort of political analogy. I don't know, put a 5 in the chat if you have watched RFK Jr. Any interviews, long format interviews with RFK Jr. He was running his own independent campaign and then for various reasons, wasn't able to kind of get himself on the ballot in the way that he needed, so he ended up endorsing Trump. But did anyone watch RFK Jr. interviews? If you didn't, I'm going to ask you to go back and watch some, because he is a beautiful example of being non-reactive to ego in others. I have never seen a politician like him, and personal belief is he is a very evolved spiritual being, because you watch on a spiritual level, right, through this lens that I'm giving you now. If you watch his actions, he does not take anything personally. Now, he has been ripped apart by the media for decades. He used to be like the glory child. You know, he's a Kennedy. He got our Hudson River cleaned up. He was an environmental lawyer, an activist, and he did amazing things for the environment. Then he touched on vaccinations, and they lit him up over it, right? And he was just saying, hey, hang on a second, there should be more information available to the public than is. And it seems like some of these agencies are not being regulated in the way that they're supposed to be because they've sort of bought their way in. So the people that are regulating them are now paid off by them. So he was just kind of like holding up a mirror and saying, this isn't right. He's not anti-vax, not anything like that, but he's been smeared that way. But he doesn't react. It is amazing to watch this man. Interviewers, journalists will try and bring him down into this ego war, right? I'm right, you're wrong, this, that. He elevates the conversation every time. He says, I'm not going there. Like it's not productive, right? okay, this person said that or that person said this. I'm not angry about it. Like, they just don't know. He's seeing the unconsciousness at work and he's not engaging. He's keeping the level of consciousness higher. He's going, all of that doesn't matter. I'm just pointing to truth. And I loved what he said in here. I don't remember what page it was, but he was talking about, look, when you stop taking it personally, truth is truth. Like, yes, there is right and wrong in the world. Like, if you were to say, light travels faster than sound, right? And when someone says no, sound travels faster than light, one of you is wrong and one of you is right. The problem is when you bring your ego into it and you get locked in on your position as if it's an identity of you and you attack because you feel like you're being attacked. And RFK Jr., out of all the people that I've watched sort of in the political arena, he has a beautiful way of not reacting, of staying neutral, not taking it personally and going, no, this is the truth. I am just giving facts and I'm linking facts. And you can go look up these facts. And this is what I conclude based on the facts. Now, if you think I'm wrong, let's discuss the facts. Not your opinion, your emotional response, nothing. Just let's look at the facts. So it's really interesting. It's kind of like the example he gives on page 63 of like, if you get served soup at a restaurant, it's fine for you to say to the waiter, hey, my soup is cold. Could you go warm it up? That's fine to ask. But if you start making it an identity thing, how dare you serve me cold soup? Now your ego is involved. You get it? It's totally different. Like, you took it like a personal affront. Like, how dare you give me cold soup? No, it's just, hey, my soup is cold. Could you heat it up? Totally different. There's the right and a wrong there. And it's okay to advocate for yourself. But it's like you don't get identified with it. Is this making sense? If you don't know him, go watch him. You will watch a master in action at not getting involved in ego, which is like, and then in the political arena, it's like all it is. You're just watching unconsciousness hitting up against unconsciousness. And it's fascinating when you have this kind of lens to see it. So, wow, I've been rambling. We're 20 minutes in. Well, I'm not rambling. I think we've been teaching on a point. I think it's been good. Was this helpful? Like, put a 5 in the chat if helpful. High five me if this was a helpful discussion. Is this helping you? I think that sometimes these sort of spiritual, it's like real esoteric. It doesn't make sense until you ground it into an example. His name is Robert Kennedy Jr. I think there's a website, whoisbobbykennedy.com. It's like a nice kind of overview of him. But yeah, just watch some of it. It will be saved. This live will be saved, Natalia, don't worry. And I'll be putting it up on my podcast as well on YouTube. Okay, so this is making sense. Good. So these examples are good. I just felt like politics is so in all of our faces right now that this is like the perfect time to be having this discussion because it's a beautiful example of all of these things. So, he talks about how if you can just start to become aware of the voice, you are becoming conscious, right? Unconsciousness is thinking I am my thoughts. Consciousness is going, that doesn't matter. As another example. So Kennedy, for those of you not following, he wanted to be president. He was running as an independent because the Democrats wouldn't let him into the primaries and lots of all this stuff happening. He became an independent so he could get on the ballot. Well, it became very clear because he was getting blocked left, right, and center. They weren't allowing him to debate. He was doing all this stuff. And so finally, he literally had to put aside his own ego and desire to be president and say, if I'm going to get into the White House and actually tackle, his passion is health. He believes that America is unhealthy because of toxic things getting into our food, pharma not being regulated in the way that it should. And so his whole desire is to help Americans get healthy again, specifically kids, because kids are really sick right now. That's his desire. And he feels like that's his mission here on earth. And so he put his ego aside and said, well, if I can't get in there myself, I'm going to have to back one of these candidates. And he reached out to both. And one was way more open to letting him do what he's saying. And so he endorsed him, right? Which is how he ended up there. So he humbled himself to go, okay, I don't need to be president. Let's get me into an administration so I can actually do the work I'm here to do. I mean, that to me is just a beautiful example of someone's own ego going away, out of meeting the moment as the moment was meeting him and going, well, let me put my own agenda aside of personal, I want to be president, to just, well, what's going to lead me to be able to accomplish what I need to accomplish without the titles. Just super interesting. just really like, it's kind of interesting timing to be reading this book and then watching the dynamics of that because it's playing out, for everybody to see. Okay. The next thing is reactivity and grievances. Through reacting against this or that, they assert and strengthen their feeling of self. So the more we react, like think about, again, Democrats, Republicans, the more we react, the more you kind of just like get identified with that. And that's not you. Okay. That's ego. It's fascinating to watch. And you'll watch people have political discourse and it gets emotional and heated real quick. Why? Because they're so identified with it. They so believe it to be a part of their being. When the reality is, guys, we're way more than this. There's way more happening than, who's running the government. Anyway, collective grievances can survive, though, for centuries in the psyche of a nation. Look at what's going on with Israel and Palestine, right? I mean, this is something that is in the psyche of that area culturally over hundreds, thousands of years. The dynamics of, who's in ownership of this land and what's going on. This is the grievances that have been held collectively in the psyche. And now people are so identified with because they're born and they're brought up with it and they're told. This is how these things happen. And the truth is, the past has no power to stop you from being present now. The truth is, people can release the past. I realize I am not any of these things. None of that is relevant because right here, right now, this is the situation that's in front of me. And then you can move forward, right? But it's difficult, right? And there's nothing that strengthens the ego more than being right. That was one sentence I underlined and highlighted and was like, yeah, that's the truth of it. Nothing strengthens your ego more than being right. Release it. Release the need to be right and to justify yourself and blah, 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 blah. It's like if you're talking with someone that's completely unconscious, you're never going to get there anyway. It doesn't matter. You can show somebody truth and they are so entrenched, right? It's so interesting these days with the internet and with video and the ability, to like look at information. You can put information in front of somebody and because they believe the opposite so strongly, they cannot see the truth that's in front of them. They won't accept it. It's really fascinating. I mean, it is absolutely a fascinating thing, but if you understand the ego, all you can do is have compassion for them. You don't get upset. You're just like, man, they're really deeply unconscious. They just don't know. They just don't know. And the illusion, is very real. All right. We got a couple minutes left. Where do we want to go? This is just more about the ego. The other thing I wanted to get to, I think it was a really interesting point about religion. We'll sort of end with that. Let me flip my thing over here. If there's anything else I wanted to point out. No, I think we did a pretty good job at understanding consciousness, unconsciousness, blah, blah, blah. Remembering that, awareness is allowing yourself to realize that I am not my thoughts. And so in each reaction, everything that life is showing, every time the thoughts come in, it's going, no, I'm not that. If you want to increase your consciousness, just increase your awareness. Your awareness that you are not those pre-programmed thoughts and reactions. All right. Every event in life is helping you to become more aware of your reactions. Every event in life is thus helping you to become more conscious if you allow it. All right. If you allow it. Now, the last piece was about religion, which, anyway, interesting. So he says, all religions are equally false and equally true. How interesting. Depending on how you use them, right? This is kind of like the soup. Yes, it's true it should be warm, but if you tell them, how dare you serve me cold soup, now it's false because your ego has gotten involved. All religions are equally false and equally true, depending on how you use them. You can use them in service of the ego, or you can use them in service of the truth. I was just with my spiritual teacher this weekend. It was his birthday, his 92nd birthday. And he was sharing this story about how this guy, went through his life and, he's tithing to his church and he's volunteering here and volunteering there and doing all these things. And he dies and he gets to heaven, or he gets there to decide, are you going to heaven or hell? And God says, you're going to hell. And the man says, well, why? I did all the things that I was supposed to do. And God says, yes, but you did them in service of ego, not just in service. And so therefore you're going to hell. And so the whole point being that the way in which you do something and the why behind the reason for you doing it is everything. Is it involving your ego or is it not involving your ego? And that creates the difference. And that's the same thing he's saying here. You can use them in service of the ego. You can use religion in service of the ego, or you can use it in service of the truth, seeking awareness and higher consciousness. He says, if you believe only your religion is truth, you are using it in the service of the ego. Yikes. Because now you're making a they're wrong, I'm right, and that's ego. Used in such a way, religion becomes an ideology and it creates an illusory sense of superiority as well as division and conflict between people. In the service of the truth, religious teachings represent signposts or maps left behind by awakened humans to assist you in spiritual awakening. That is to say, in becoming free of identification with form. Every religion, as we've talked about in this book, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, all of these religions are getting you the texts, right? These enlightened beings were trying to help you see, right? Original sin, you're missing the mark. You are not this form. You are the awareness of it. You are the ocean, not the wave. It's the same thing that the Buddhists say. It's the same thing in all of these religions. But when the ego mind takes over, he talks about and it can just get misinterpreted and all of a sudden we're having war and all sorts of crazy stuff is happening in the name of religion, which is just like a total bastardization of what it actually is. So being in touch with it is your natural state, not some miraculous achievement. All of your actions and relationships will reflect the oneness with all of life that you sense deep within. This is love. Laws, commandments, rules, and regulations are necessary for those who are cut off from who they are and the truth within. So, sorry, I didn't set that up very well. When you are in touch with the dimension within yourself, when you're in touch with the truth of who you are, with that awareness and not the ego, with the ocean and not the wave, you will realize everything is the ocean. And so you will treat everything with honor, respect, and love because it's you. And therefore, you will treat everyone as if they are God. And then you don't need laws. You don't need all of these things, all of these controls, because you're operating with such clarity from an internal sense, because you're connected with this. You're connected with what he says, love. And again, being in touch with this is your natural state, not some miraculous achievement. This is how it's supposed to be. And all of your actions and relationships will reflect the oneness with all of life that you sense deep within. This is love. Remember I shared with you, I think it was last week, this the woman that I came across that's able to communicate with animals. And she said the animals aren't even angry that we are killing them because they realize that we are unconscious and they feel sorry for us. It's like when Jesus said, "Forgive them, Father, for they do not know." You can only have compassion for the unconsciousness once you become conscious. It's wild. All right. Laws, commandments, rules, and regulations are necessary for those who are cut off from who they are. When you are cut off from this and the ego is taking control, the ego's out for itself. The ego is willing to do all sorts of stuff to make sure it can survive and it's number one. And that sort of world, this cutthroat world, it doesn't work well. And I think that's what we're seeing. We're at a really interesting moment in time where the ego has gotten so dominant in the collective consciousness of humanity that it's literally going to kill itself. Like, we will cause our own destruction if we do not become aware and realize the connection we have to everything. Yeah. So, all right. Powerful. We will finish chapter 3 next week. So page 72 up until the end. I don't know what the end is. Let's see. In my book, oh, there it goes, 84. So 72 to 84. So we'll read the rest of chapter 3. We'll discuss it next week. If you've got any comments, anything you want to share, let me know. Guys, share this to your pages. Share this with people. Tag somebody in this. If we can help lift and shift the consciousness of others, just becoming slightly less unconscious, it will collectively shift all of us. But this is not just for you. This is for others. We need to start spreading the awareness. Bring people to book club or just share this, particular thing, especially with the political landscape. I mean, hopefully I explained it in a way that makes sense, but it's just a beautiful example. So yes, agreed, Tina. Heavy day. There's a lot of heavy stuff here, but it's like once you see through it, it's amazing what can open up. So lots of love to all of you. Thank you for joining me. We'll be back next week, and I will be putting these up. If you're not already, please subscribe to the Inner Mastery podcast over on YouTube. It's just youtube.com/Inner Mastery podcast. I'm putting these up there. So you can get, people that maybe aren't on Facebook or Instagram or whatever, you can get them access to it. All right. Lots of love. I'll see you guys soon.